like a nice library whisper.
Oh, we like a library whisper.
Some asthma.
Some asthma for your podcasting pleasure.
Carol.
I'm wearing color today.
I love that for you.
Right? And it's all of the colors.
It's all the way.
Yes. I had it custom made.
Oh.
So I was at a retreat recently and met a gentleman, and he owns a place called Tito's Tie-Dye. And I was looking at all the stuff and I was like, I really want something that's got all the colors in it. I'm looking to add more color, but I can't find one that's not like, I didn't want to swirl.
Yeah.
I was like, I just kind of wanted to be each of the colors, but I can't find it anywhere. And he's like, okay. And he was like, I can probably help with that. And then he delivered this one like a week ago. And I was like, yes, this is what
Perfect.
And it's super comfy. So.
I love that.
Right?
Yeah.
The kids it's tie-dye season here. It's tie-dye season. They tie-dyed at school before the end of the year. They tie-dyed at swim like last week. So I had to remember to untie-dye the tie-dye and get it like washed. Yeah. I saw somebody else was doing tie-dye and I was like, oh my God, I never
the tie-dyeing.
Right. I was like, I never undid them. So they've just been sitting in the bag for 2 days. I was like, they're going to be nice and colorful, I guess.
They'll be very colorful.
Right. At least I didn't leave them outside because I'm not sure what that would have done in the heat. We're having a heat wave right now.
Could have been very interesting.
Right. I don't know what you guys
absorbed it.
Right. That's what I was thinking. But I don't know what you all are doing over where you are, but it is hot as heck over here.
Welcome to summer.
Right. Like it went from like beautiful and like not even pool weather. Like, oh, it's a little chilly to be in the pool to you either have to be in the pool or you have to be inside. There are no other options right now.
There is no in between.
No in between whatsoever. So early morning swim practice is great for the kids because they're in the pool, but I'm sitting out there like I'm losing a toddler's weight in sweat right now because it's so hot outside.
Gross.
Right?
Gross.
Very much so. Oh, but it kind of goes along with the theme of what I read this week for this episode, what I read for this episode. So I'm excited to kind of chat about today's topic, which is we chose Pride books for this one because it is June.
It's Pride Month.
And it is Pride Month. And I read a lot of queer authors, which, you know, it just, whoever I read, right? It's not like I'm seeking anybody out specifically, but it's always nice to kind of learn a little bit about the authors as we're reading. So it's nice to having been able to include some of them. But I
think we look for the author info after.
We
definitely choose books based on story and premise and, you know, everything else. We're just kind of like, we'll figure it out later.
Right. And then I'm pleasantly surprised afterwards. I'm like, oh, sweet. Like, not only did I love this book, but it was written by this, you know, this author, or they're from this place, or they identify with this community. And I think that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So what did you read? I'm going to tell you right now. I can't remember. I know we talked about it. Cannot remember what you chose.
I read 2. So I did read 2. Yes.
Oh, good.
So the first one I picked when we discussed this episode is called The In-Between Bookstore by Edward Underhill. Right. Yes, because I was like, ooh, we love a bookstore theme.
We do.
Anyway. And it was this premise that this transgender man was having a really tough time. He had left where he lived as a child because he didn't fit in and he didn't think he could find himself. And he was, you know, definitely having identity issues.
Right.
And thought escaping to New York City, as we all do, you can reinvent yourself there.
Right.
So the story picks up with him about to turn 30. He just lost his job. He's celebrating with his friends, but he's not in a good place mentally.
Right.
And then his mom lets him know that she's moving. So he breaks his lease because he's about to be kicked out anyway. He doesn't have a job. So he packs all his stuff up into a rental car and drives back to his little country hometown. And you know, has a lot of mixed emotions going back and is seemingly in the same place mentally, like struggling to find himself now in this different place. So you're kind of thinking, oh, like, and there's a lot to align with because you're like, oh, maybe it's not my community. Maybe it's me. Like, maybe I'm the one, you know?
Right.
And so he goes back to his hometown. And lo and behold, his best friend, who he had a huge falling out with that summer before he moved, is still there, is now a teacher. Like, so they kind of try to figure out where they went wrong.
Yeah.
In the meantime, he stumbles into the bookstore he used to work at, the in-between bookstore. But weirdly, like, nothing has changed. And so then he starts speaking to the clerk behind the desk, and he's like, this person looks very familiar. Turns out it's 16-year-old Darby, which is who he is. His name's
Right.
Darby. And he's like, holy shit, like, that was me. And now he's reliving, you know, he was still a girl at the time, but was struggling with what that meant.
Right.
Not really sure where he belonged, not really sure, but also kind of thinking, like, I have to get out of this small town. Like, there's no room for me here.
Right.
I can't
Right.
find myself here. I will tell you, I think him rekindling his relationship with his best friend, realizing his best friend is queer as well now, and was back then, and like why they had the falling out that they had, now finding out that there's a full queer friend group, like that he was running from and didn't realize like everything that was happening.
That makes me feel sad. Like,
Yes.
like, I'm like,
Yes,
oh,
and
like you left because you didn't think there was a place, but the place for you had been there.
it was there and had reestablished in New York. He had a great group of friends who loved him, who supported him, but he didn't let them. He wouldn't let people in.
Right.
And so, like, at this point in time, we're following Darby's story. I didn't quite understand why we had to go back in time in the bookstore because the same story was running parallel
At
outside
almost
of the
30.
store when he was meeting up with his best friend and like trying to work through what went wrong.
Right.
You know, and to try to figure that relationship out. But I think he was trying to also figure it out from young Darby's perspective. And I think reading it as a 40-year-old, I'm like, stop running. Let people love you.
Just let them love you.
You know?
Just let them love you the way that they can, the way that they want to.
Yes.
Because we are very good at like deciding how we feel we should be loved instead of allowing somebody to just love them in the way that they can give to us.
Yeah, or
That's a very
like not
controlling
letting
thing.
people
Yeah.
in because we're different and how dare you think you understand how I feel, which I totally get. We all have the different things. But reading the story and reading the struggles, I was like, oh, like we can all relate to not fitting in, thinking we have to escape, like thinking we have to be somebody else or how that defines us. So it was an interesting story. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I just wasn't sure about the bookstore itself as the main theme because I wasn't getting anything from
less about the bookstore. So was it parallel stories? Like you would get some of 16-year-old Darby and then you'd get some of 29-year-old Darby? Like was it going back and forth or was it just one time where it was like, so this is 16-year-old Darby here and here's where we are?
Yeah, so the only time you met 16-year-old Darby was when Darby met Darby, when he would go into the bookstore. And it was like this weird time travel thing that took him back to August of 2009.
Oh, okay. But he was
which is like leading up to when he left.
Okay.
And so he's going in and he's kind of like, he's talking to himself. So he's able to interact with himself.
Okay.
And he's trying to chat with him. And he's also trying to watch young Darby's interactions.
Right.
To kind of see what went wrong because he knew this was the week that he left and he knew that this was when everything just went to shit.
Right.
And so he was trying to figure that out. But when he left the bookstore, it was normal present day and he was able to have the conversations with his former friend, with the new former friend's new friend group.
Right.
You know, and so it was like he was getting that, but he kept trying to escape to figure it out. And I think that's kind of where I wanted to like shake him a little bit and be like, it's right here. Like we can figure it out over here. So yeah, it was a very interesting story. I just wasn't sure about the bookstore and why it existed.
Was there like a butterfly effect possibility there?
No.
Where like that didn't even exist?
That didn't even exist. So that's one of the things that we explored, because he was like, oh, kind of tried to give him, without saying like, here's why you feel this way.
Right.
He tried to like nudge, nudge, hint, hint, like, could you order me this book on transgender history? Can you order like, hey, did you happen to look at that book? Like, to try to give himself, but he knew that he didn't have that experience.
Right. Okay.
And he also knew that like young Darby had done a couple of different things, and he was like, whoa, I didn't do that. I don't remember doing that. But nothing changed. There was no butterfly effect. So that's why I was very curious. And then one day he went into the bookstore, and it was not the old bookstore. It was the new present day bookstore. And like that was the end of.
And we don't get to see young Darby anymore.
And we figure it out in real present day.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
That's a very layered book.
It was very layered. I think what I walked away from with that is that, to some degree, we're all searching for ourselves. We would all like to be able to define ourselves one way or the other. We're all looking for a place to belong, a group to belong with, someone who understands us. And so, yeah, I think we're more alike than we are different, even though we all have different things going on,
100%.
So, yeah, that's kind of what I read into it. I liked it, but also didn't understand like why we had the bookstore.
You're like, why is this? And the fact that it's called the In-Between Bookstore, but the bookstore's not like the central focus.
Yeah. It kind of was, but like I feel like we could have taken that out and it would have still been the same story. Okay. And so then, of course, we know how I read. I'm like, did I miss something? Did I not connect some pieces that I should have connected? But I feel like the story could have still been the same.
Right. Would you have titled it something different? Like if you had a chance to be like, hey, instead of calling it the In-Between Bookstore, would you have titled it something different that made more sense? Putting you right on the spot here.
I was going to say it is, because if I did remove the bookstore, it would completely change. I will say it also read from Darby's perspective, so it could have very well have been like an autobiography, the way it was written. And the way that Darby spoke about it, and the way he relived certain situations. So,
Interesting.
Yeah, it was. It was a very interesting story.
Huh. Well, that's fun.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you rate it?
I didn't. I just realized that I never marked it as read, and I
I think
have
I did
not
the same
marked
thing.
it as finished.
Right. I don't think I did any of those things on mine either.
Yeah, I think solid 3-star. Like good story, fully enjoyed. Definitely a very cool premise. I just think there could have been some other things done maybe with the bookstore.
Fair.
So, yeah.
Fair. Well, that's very cool. I read one that was released this year. So like a new release that I've seen in the bookstore a couple of times, and happened to go in one day, and I was like, we were at dinner or something, and it was like, hey, want to go to the bookstore? And girl's never going to say no.
I'm not going to say no.
Part of me was like, I just bought new books. I feel like I don't need anything. But then I walked in and I was like, I've seen this book like 3 times. I think I'm going to pick it up. And then it was recommended a couple times on some of the stuff that I was looking at. So I read Disco Witches of Fire Island by Blair Fell. Did you read it? Is that your second one?
I did not read it, but I saw it and I was like, ooh, I want to read this one. This one looks really good. And then I saw you picked it up and I was like, okay, I'm going to hear what you have to say.
I will save it for you when you come to camp this summer.
Put it in my pile.
I will save it for you because I think you'll enjoy it. It is it's technically historical fiction, but doesn't read like a historical fiction, right?
Okay.
It is.
I was gonna say we all know how I feel about those,
right? But you're gonna like this one because I didn't recognize it as historical fiction until like later on. Okay. So it is set in the 1980s, the late 1900s, 1980s, 1990s, and it's during the AIDS epidemic. Mm-hmm. Right. And so it's basically about these 2 best friends. You've got Ronnie and you've got Joe. Joe is your main character. And they live in New York. They decide that they are going to go and spend the summer working at Fire Island. And so they're going to go to Fire Island. They're going to get jobs there. Ronnie and Joe are newer best friends. And they're like, hey, we're going to get jobs. Ronnie's like, I'm going to meet a really wealthy dude and I'm going to marry him and I'm going to be like super happy. And then we'll own a house there and it'll be great. So I only have to spend one summer like working my butt off and it'll be fine. And Joe's like, well, I just got over, he lost his partner to AIDS. And so he is like reeling, right? He's not able to get over anything. He's not really grieved. He's just kind of like stuck with it. And then he's noticing. And at this point, everybody, like you can see the difference in Fire Island, right? You can see who's there, who's going, you can see those who are suffering, from the symptoms of AIDS. You can see those who are young and healthy and, the decisions that they're making. And so it's very, from what I understand and what I've read, it's very true to the time. Clearly wasn't there, was a wee babe at that point, so was not hanging out at Fire Island myself. But it does have magic because Joe goes and figures out like Ronnie doesn't have a place for him to stay. And Ronnie like had promised, he's like, no, I've got it all set up, we're good to go. And Joe gets there and Ronnie's like, sorry, man. Good luck finding somewhere. And so Joe's like, oh my God. And you can tell he's very not necessarily shy, but he lacks confidence in anything.
Reserved.
He's like a really hot dude, right? But he's very much just kind of like, he doesn't know who he is without his partner. He doesn't know who he is. He doesn't know what his purpose is. He doesn't know how to get from point A to point B, and just he's kind of like tripping over things. But he meets Lenny and Howie, who I absolutely love. They are wild and they love to dress in bright colors and they love to disco dance and they love to do all of these things, right? So we're getting to the title of the book. So Lenny and Howie are part of basically a coven. And that coven is tasked with protecting the young men on Fire Island from, becoming a statistic, making bad choices, whatever the darkness is. And so it's a little bit of a dual storyline. So you've got Joe and Joe's experience, but then you've also got Lenny and Howie and Dory and, a whole bunch of different characters who are part of this coven who are trying to figure out, what's going on Fire Island and why these boys essentially keep going missing. These young men keep going missing and, all of that kind of stuff. So there's a lot that happens there and there is definitely some magic and you do have some clairvoyance. And you do have, instead of making, cauldron stuff, he's making like, a tea here or there and, reading auras and all of this kind of stuff. So it's actually really like, there are parts of it that are super lighthearted. And then there are other parts that are just like heart aching where you're like, oh,
you're going through all the emotions.
Yeah. He's trying to find himself. He's trying to get back out there and like do the stuff. He ends up becoming a bartender, which we love. He gets a job at Dory's bar. And on the same side, Dory's bar is in danger of being shut down if they don't do well. And he's also never bartended before. So he's like, there's all these things that are happening where he's right in the middle of stuff.
A bunch of firsts that he's just experiencing.
Exactly. But at the same time, he's trying to discover like who he is on his own, what it is that he wants. He's also kind of being lured around by this mysterious gladiator man, is what he calls him, who he can never actually get close to talking to, but seems like super dangerous. And so there's like all of this crazy stuff that's swirling around. And he spends a lot of time not trusting himself or second guessing or like letting everybody else's thoughts and opinions like get into his space and into his face, that he's not choosing things for himself. And so I feel like over half the book is him like stumbling and making mistakes and you're just like, chill. You're just like, take a second, take a breath, stop doing what everybody else tells you to do and like follow that gut feeling.
Yes.
But it's also part of that healing process where he's trying to find his way. And there's stuff that you don't learn in the beginning of the book that like is a big deal that definitely answers why he acts the way that he does.
Yes.
But you don't get into that until well past midpoint, where then all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay. So there's so many things that happen. It is not a book for everybody. If you find yourself a little squeamish on the promiscuity side, this is not a book for you. It's got some strong language. It's got strong themes. It's got, it's very, I think, true to the community. Right? You've got some language in there that you wouldn't use in polite company and you're taught not to use. And so it's one of those things that like, if those sorts of things offend you, not a book for you. Great book, but not a book for everybody. Then I think that's kind of what makes a good book a good book.
Right.
Right?
They're
like
not
I really
generic
enjoyed
for
it.
everybody.
And I will tell you, I learned a couple of things where I was like, oh, had no idea that was a thing.
Yeah.
Like had no clue that was, you know, part of the community or part of the expectation or part of whatever. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? But it was very interesting to kind of see it from the perspective of this cast of characters, because you get it from everybody else's part, right? You don't hear a lot from Ronnie's perspective, but you hear mostly from Joe's perspective, and you get a little bit from Howie's, and you get a little bit from Lenny's, but it's mostly, I want to say, Joe and Howie that you're getting it from. But I mean, Howie and Lenny are in their like 60s. They're not young men, but they've lived on Fire Island forever.
Yeah.
And they're cleaners, and they're, you know, they do all these things. So it's very interesting to see, you know, you've got 29-year-old Joe and 6-year-old Howie and Lenny, and how this juxtaposition kind of comes together and how everybody's really interconnected. And they're all kind of looking out for each other.
Wild that you said Joe was 29, and in my
right?
book, Darby was 29.
That's what
and I'm like, there's a huge identity shift too that happens if you think about like the Saturn return.
Oh, they talk about that. Literally, they talk about the Saturn. Like they say, I think one of the lines is he's in his first Saturn return.
That's what it was brought up in mine too. And I was like, oh, okay. You know, and that is the age, you know, and us being older now, like we've been through that. And we're like, come on, man, just get it together. Like, be yourself, follow your own gut, follow your own heart, do what you want, fuck what everybody else says.
But when I was in my 20s, I wasn't thinking that.
I was not, right?
I was probably just trying to figure out like how to be an adult at that point.
Right? I'm supposed to be an adult. What does this mean?
Right.
Yes.
Which is funny because when I see younger individuals now who are like, oh my God, I'm turning 30. I can't believe I'm turning 30. I have friends who are like, oh, I turned 30 this year. And I'm like, girl, I'm getting ready to turn 40. Like, it's like, enjoy. Like, this is fun. Like,
yes.
And I will tell anybody that talks to me that I had so much more fun in my 30s than I did in my 20s. And you would think that you don't, right? You would think that the 20s is like a little bit more wild, a little bit more crazy, a little bit more experimental, which it might be. But I will say, I feel safer in my 30s. Mm-hmm. I feel more confident in my 30s.
You feel more adulty?
Probably not. Maybe not adulty, but definitely more confident in where I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? If I could talk to 20-year-old me, I'd be like, could you just knock that off? You're wasting a lot of energy and a lot of time thinking about that.
Yes.
But, and I think some of that wisdom is trying to be like from the book is trying to be imparted to Joe, where they're like, look, I've seen a lot of things. I've done a lot of things, like literally a lot of things, more than you'll ever do. But here are the couple of the themes that I've learned that I think are really important for you. And he's like, okay.
Sure, whatever,
like,
you know, and you're like, you just want to shake them. You're just like, just listen, but also like,
but they have to get
there. At that age,
like,
I was not.
No,
I was not either.
No.
Yeah.
And I really liked, I follow the author actually on Instagram. You know how I love my Instagram. I follow Blair Fell on Instagram. And since it is, you know, Pride Month, he's been in a lot of Pride events with like his author table, right? So not only does he write books, he also writes, I think it's screenplays. He does TV. He's also an ASL interpreter. Like,
very
this
cool.
man does many things. And so it's been kind of cool to see kind of all the things that he's been doing in real time as I was reading the book. So, you know, it was interesting to see the man behind it.
Yeah.
And to kind of see what he does in daily life. So it's been really neat to kind of follow that journey as well as like alongside reading the book. So I don't know. I enjoyed it. It is definitely a romance book. It's definitely historical fiction. It's definitely, you know, a little bit of fantasy because you've got the magic in there. So it kind of ticked all the boxes I like.
Magical realism. Yes.
Right?
I was going to say that all of those are check for you.
Right. And you've got people who are discovering who they are and what, you know, what powers, not to say not really powers, but what abilities, that's a better word, what abilities. They have to kind of like develop. All of that kind of comes through. So the coven's getting older and they have to figure out what happens next.
Very cool.
But I'm definitely not
I'm
going to
excited. Yeah.
It is good.
Put that in my reserve pile. Thank you.
So it's just, and I've always heard of Fire Island, right? Mm-hmm. Not really in my, I don't travel often to places anyway, but definitely never been to Fire Island and don't think it's a thing that, you know, I'm going to go to just because it's not what it used to be, right? But at the same time, I had no idea the level at which it was such like a destination, right? Like you hear about Vegas. Vegas is a destination, right? Yes. I'm going to Vegas for this. I'm going to Vegas for this. Miami, like also a destination. I don't think I was fully aware of the magnitude of destination that was Fire Island.
Interesting. Okay.
And I think maybe if I had been a little older during the 80s and 90s,
at that
time, it would have been something I knew about. But I just think I missed that literal, like, pun intended, missed that boat on regarding the island, just because I was too young at that point.
Too young at that point.
Yes, I was too wee.
Yes. Yes.
So, like I said, I enjoyed it. And also, we love a book that's got sprayed edges. They've all got like these cerulean blue edges. It's really nice. Cerulean? Yes, blue. The light water blue.
Yeah, cerulean blue.
Cerulean blue.
Yeah.
So, definitely putting that one. I rated that one 4. I didn't put it down, but I know that I was going to give it a 4. It was either going to be a 3.5 or a 4. And I think because I still think about it in such detail, 4. Yeah. I think that's where it went for me. Yeah. And it did. It got everything. There were times where you were laughing. There were times where you were like, oh, I would also like to cry right now.
I'm crying now.
Exactly. All right. So what was the other one you read?
So I know last time we talked about autobiographies, I swore I was not going to read another autobiography. But this one...
But I lied.
I just had to. So It's one I've actually had for a while. Anybody who knows me knows I am obsessed with drag queens.
Yes.
RuPaul being like
you're gonna love Disco Witches
of all time, right? So I've grown up watching RuPaul. I have watched him in all his, like, you know, like there's like the supermodels of the world, like that is like number one drag queen for me. And then watching all of his drag race shows, like, and seeing all the other drag queens come out of that. It's kind of like a therapy session watching those because, you know, they're going through like all this chaotic energy and like identity, like, who am I? And then they get into drag and it's like it just flips a light switch and they're confident and like, you know, like it's this whole character, it's this whole persona. And so I've had the first autobiography. I know he just did another one. But I have had the other one for a while. It's called Letting It All Hang Out. And so I was like, you know what? I think this is the perfect time, like, to read this. In. Like, I need an excuse. But also, like, there's a little, you know, we like a gold star. We like a peer pressure. Like, you should read this
Something to shove us in that direction.
Yes. And so reading about his history, just really solidifies like how great his achievements are now, because he came from nothing. He was not supported. He had no idea like what he wanted to be, what he wanted to do. And it wasn't like he fell into things accidentally. He like went there intentionally. And he made stuff happen. And he was talking about putting up posters like #1 supermodel of the world. He was in like a punk band. So it was very much like skirting around drag for a long time.
Right.
And just kind of circling and circling and circling. And then finally it was like, oh, he was like, 10 years. To go.
This is the place.
Yeah, like 10 years after all of this. And so he said like gender fluidity was always a thing. Like he would put on a suit, you know, like he was going to a bank, you know, like those guys do. He was like, that's what getting into drag was for me. You know, I dressed to shock and awe, basically. Right. And so he was like, I didn't think it meant anything about me. It was just kind of stepping into this character. And so seeing like the home life that he had, like he was against all kinds of odds, like that people would just crumble and give up. Like, oh, I don't have what it takes. You know, I can't. And like that was never an excuse. And so it was very interesting because he was very candid. He was very detailed. He wasn't hiding anything in the book. And it was, like I said, it was written, I was trying to find the date before we jumped on here, but it was one of his first ones. So it was very early, like talking about being, growing up as a child and like getting shifted around to different schools and like trying to figure yourself out. And then like the 80s, back and forth from New York to Atlanta to back to New York, you know, like figuring this out and just kind of like hitting rock bottom and like, what do you do at that point? So it was very cool to see. Like, I think it just made him that much more larger than life for me, because you're like, holy crap, like the things that you went through, people would be like he really had something to push for. Like he didn't know what it was in the beginning, but like it kind of all made sense as he started just trying things.
Right.
So I'd be very curious to read. I know he just released another one, but I'd be curious to read that one now too, just to see the reflection.
Yeah, and the evolution,
and like
from where
he is from there to here, and like what changed, because that was really like his foundation and how he set up. And the kind of the theme that we were talking about is like that identity and finding your tribe and figuring out who you are and like what you want. And so it was very cool to see. So I read that one.
I feel like in all three of the books that we've discussed today, there's this theme of loneliness, and not in a way that it's like chosen, but it's just a way that it's kind of put onto them, right?
Yeah.
They feel this sense of just being alone and just having to do it on their own. And you see the difference between somebody who does it and puts forth the effort and like he does, definitely pushes forward and says like, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And there's a level of confidence there that not everybody possesses. And even when you're not feeling confident, to go and do it. But it's so interesting that the theme of loneliness is what starts that.
Yeah.
And it's that feeling of like, I'm just by myself and have to figure it out. And then the transition, and then the, moving things forward and how it works to change who they are and help them to kind of open up to themselves. Because I feel like
running from it.
I feel like a lot of them are very closed off from
fully owning it,
their truth.
Yeah.
And whatever that truth might be. And, sometimes they hold themselves apart, where they, especially in the book I read, there was a little bit of like oh, that's not me. I don't do that. I'm not like that. Like whatever. In the same vein, we're like, yeah, we are. There's a lot of similarities between all of us.
Yes.
And sometimes it's okay just to let that float and to just be, and to just know, hey, yeah, this is part of who I am, and that's fine.
Yeah. And I would say, to add on to that, one of the biggest lessons is just face the fear, like head on. Because running from it seems so much worse. And I know that's so easy when you're reading a book to be like, oh, I know what you need to do. Like, I can see that you are running from your fears and you should just stop and embrace. And, but also like, hello, mirror. Like,
yeah, how many times have I actually been like, yeah, I'm fine to sit here and not run or not embrace, and just to kind of like hold everything at an arm's length.
Avoid eye contact.
Right. We're just, if I can't see it, it can't see me. It's something that we all do.
Right.
And so to tell these stories, I think is very cool for that reminder of the, let go and just do it.
Just be you.
Nike had something going on there.
Just be you, whatever that means. Yeah. It doesn't even have to look like anybody else or fit into any other categories or stereotypes or anybody else's stories. You just be you, whatever that means. Fully embraced.
Yeah. Be who you are.
We need more of you.
Yes. All of the different yous.
Yeah.
I thought this was a lot of fun.
Yes.
Because I don't think I've ever sought out specifically and been like, we're going to do, a Pride episode. I'm going to, it's kind of like reading the books for the holidays. I'm like, I always set out and go like, I'm going to read holiday books. Why not?
We love a theme.
Right. We love a good theme. And so this was a great theme. It was a nice and timely theme. And it was, like I said, an enjoyable book. I really enjoyed all of the different pieces of it for mine. So I'm actually would love to, I think part of me still wants to read the bookstore one, just because I'm kind of like, I want to know. I just want to know a little bit, right? Yes. So put that one in my pile.
We will do a book exchange.
Exactly, we'll exchange them. So I love that, and I think it was, like I said, another good couple books to add to our lists to get closer to goals and that never-ending TBR. I think the issue with my TBR is I don't stop buying books, so
it's just whatever happens to fall into my TBR hole.
Yes, my TBR house, my mountainous TBR. Mount TBR.
Mount TBR, yes. Exactly.
I think from there, we're almost at the end of the month.
Holy crap, where did June go?
Right, and I think we were kidding about it when we were like, oh, hi, it's June. Like, that's so funny. And now I'm like, oh my God, it's almost July.
Welcome to it. Yeah. The next episode is a June recap.
Exactly.
And then we'll be well into July.
And well into the summer. So
Happy New Year, guys. It's happening.
Welcome to 2026. But before we get there, subscribe in 25.
Subscribe in 25, because that is the cool thing to be doing right now.
It is.
For the next 6 months.
For the next however months, it seems it's going to go faster than you think. So just do it now, and then you won't miss anything.
Do it now.
Right? Do you have any favorite authors that are in the queer community that you would love to share with us? Would love to add more to my Mount TBR. Happy to add new authors all the time. So if there's anybody that you've read that you're like, hey, think you should really check this out, please put it down in the comments. Make sure you click all of the buttons, the little thumbs up, the little notification bell, all of the things. Ding. And
I'm pantomiming all of this for you.
Ding.
Subscribe, click the bell.
That's perfect. That's gonna be the start. That's what I'm putting there. But until we see you for our June recap, which is quickly coming, have a fantastic week and happy reading.
Bon voyage, bitches.
It was great to have you join us for today's chat. If you'd like to continue the conversation, provide a recommendation, or simply say hi, pop over to Instagram at wine.read.wine. Or leave us a comment on our YouTube channel. We'll see you on the next episode. Happy reading!